Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I'm talking about America, but it applies to the movies too. As a general rule, I avoid reading or listening to or in any real way ingesting other folks' opinions on subjects that I intend to review until that review has been posted on this here YouTube channel. Because I am no longer on any of those press lists that would get me early access, it's impossible for me to not know the general consensus and maybe have seen some tweets, but in-depth criticism and conversation waits until after the fact. This is because I want my review to reflect the experience that I had before it's been ruined by a million people smarter than me explaining why something is better, worse, or more problematic than I realize. And certainly my feelings do change. If you have ever looked at the official Week I Review leaderboard, you will notice that things move up or down over time. But the scores never change, because even if they feel wrong now, they were right then. But this one's different, because I've already dug a fair bit into the hashtag discourse here, and yet still decided to make this video. Is it because I have some earth-shattering new revelation that will forever change the way film is discussed critically online? No, of course not. I just want to dunk on some things that people spent years of their lives and literally hundreds of millions of dollars on, because I'm a bad person. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week I Review. You can call me really missing movie theaters. And today I am talking about the last big blockbuster to hit home video platforms in the final week of a year that I'm already kind of feeling nostalgic for, because this one is turning out to be such a shit show already. Patty Jenkins's Wonder Woman 1984. And also Christopher Nolan's Tenet, but mostly Wonder Woman. Speaking of 2017's Wonder Woman, pretty good movie, right? Like, I remember seeing it opening day at the Regal Cinemas in Union Square during the height of MoviePass, sitting with my girlfriend in the very last row because that was the only place that we could get two seats together, like half an hour before the show started. It was a lot of fun, a solid superhero origin story for a character who has not yet been origin storied to death in pop culture, starring two gorgeous individuals and featuring one virtuosic action scene in that charge across no man's land. Sure, it ended the same way every single modern superhero movie does, with two or more near invincible people punching each other until, like, someone figures out what specific finishing move they need to actually complete the task. But it was my favorite post-Nolan DC movie, at least until Birds of Prey came out. I saw Birds of Prey in IMAX twice within 1 week, both because it's great and because the opening scene of Tenet was being shown beforehand in all of its building-sized glory. And gosh, I was so excited for that movie. Although Hollywood needs to get over its 1980s obsession, I was looking forward to seeing where Patty Jenkins would take the character in a more modern setting. Plus, the whole day-and-date release on HBO Max is incredibly interesting, and it did well enough that Warner immediately greenlit a third film, which is worthy of discussion in a different video, like a review of Wonder Woman 3, should this YouTube channel and or country still exist by then. But in the here and now, we are talking about this one, and again, also Tenet a little bit. But I think that there is something to be gained in the comparison. It's worth noting that I am warmer to both of these films than most intellectual types, and maybe it's because I'm a big dummy masquerading as an intellectual in order to be popular. But really, it's because I'm a style over substance kind of person, and as long as I'm not personally offended by narrative issues, fun and flashy presentation can definitely overcome them. And both of these movies have a heck of a lot to overcome. And I would argue that it actually makes them spoiler-proof, because I could explain to you exactly what happens in each, and you would have no idea what I was talking about. They really need to be seen to be disbelieved. Wonder Woman 1984 is a wildly strange combination of a movie overstuffed with story that still feels like it could be cut by 20% without dramatically impacting anything. Emily Vanderwerf, who has been easily my favorite TV critic since her AV Club days, wrote an interesting piece for Vox about whether the film would work better as a season of television where each of the three major narratives would have some room to breathe. And I had wondered the same, and she convinced me that it should. So what have we got going on? Well, Diana is sad because her boyfriend from 70 years ago is still dead and she'll never love again or even have friends, which is pretty weird, but okay. Then a magic stone that grants wishes but takes away whatever makes the wisher special is found and subsequently mind melded with by the Mandalorian, which is pretty weird, but okay. And lastly, Kristen Wiig is all dorky in that old-fashioned comedy kind of way, but she wants to be like Diana, and that means being able to wear high heels and eventually turning into a Cheeto, which is pretty weird, but okay. And maybe I'm being a little flippant, but only in the sense that two of those subplots aren't weird so much as super depressing. And I don't mean boo-hoo, Kristen Wiig stopped being funny when she got sexy and I want the jokes, please. I mean, Kristen Wiig no longer being funny because she's sexy says some really bad things about the way we perceive women and portray them in popular media, huh? And Diana's subplot, where she is still pining for easily the best Hollywood Chris, if you didn't laugh at that, I don't want you here, is just like, hey, come on now, you're thousands of years old. He's a great Chris, but still just a Chris. And a Chris named Steve, for that matter. What's next? A Matt named John? Give me a gosh damn break. And as it stands, there is some disagreement in the critical community about which storyline this film should have focused on if it was going to be kept as a single feature instead of a series and had to focus on any of them instead of like something better. And I have seen plenty of folks argue that the Kristen Wiig arc should stay and Pedro Pascal should go. I disagree. On the one hand, an anti-Diana who has all of her physical capabilities but none of her appreciation of humanity could be compelling. But also, the first movie kind of already did that, right? Like, that's what Wonder Woman 1917 was about. Diana coming to terms with why humanity is important and worth saving. And sure, that's debatable, but I guess it's good that a modern DC superhero feels that way. You know, there's nothing about this incarnation of Barbara Minerva, aka Cheetah, that really makes it worth relitigating. Certainly not so soon after. Also, it would end with two near-invincible beings punching each other, and we've established that shit sucks. So let's just not. The fight we get between the two of them was more than enough. Maxwell Lord, on the other hand, brings Diana against a very different sort of villain, and not one that she can just punch until he stops punching back, and I like that a lot. Genuinely, it is the thing that I keep coming back to anytime I want to actively hate this movie, other than just enjoying seeing Chris Pine on screen. Maxwell Lord is the head of an oil Ponzi scheme whose investors are getting suspicious and want their money back, but he has a trick up his sleeve. That monkey's paw stone thing I mentioned before. It grants one wish, but then takes away whatever is most important to or special about the wisher, or maybe just something they really like having. I don't know. The rules don't make a lot of sense. But anyway, Lord gets his hands on the stone and does a real galaxy brain move, like legit. Instead of merely wishing for more wishes, he wishes to be the stone itself and gain the ability to grant others wishes and then take from them in the process. Which is pretty cool, TBH. And you might be thinking, wait, so he basically becomes the Djinn from the 1997 classic Wishmaster? And if you aren't, go see Wishmaster. It is dope as hell. And sadly, the answer is no. The Djinn makes wishes come true in the most literal and fucked up way. Someone who wishes for eternal beauty is turned into a mannequin, you know, that kind of thing. Lord's version is far less clever. A powerful Egyptian wishes to rule over his family's old dynasty, and it is granted, making giant walls shoot up over the Middle East in a way that's really not great, especially when you know Gal Gadot's feelings on Palestine. Yeesh. And then Lord gets to just choose what to take from him, seemingly at random. The actual stone took whatever it deemed important in some sort of objective sense. Diana's superpowers, Barbara's personality. But Lord as the stone is like, oh, I'm going to take your oil fields now. And then the dude is like, joke's on you. I already sold them to Saudi Arabia. And then Lord's like, oh, well, I'm going to take your security detail then. And then he does. Which, what? How the fuck does that work? Whatever rules you think there are get increasingly twisted and broken before really being completely dropped. And yet, as with most other Christopher Nolan films, Tenet is about time. Where previously it's been dream time or space time or wartime, now it is time. Tenet depicts a version of reality where objects can be inverted, where a bullet that has already been fired into a stone by someone in the future can be unfired by someone in the past, pulled back into the gun by the person who wills it. This is, of course, very confusing. And so the film tells you on multiple occasions that you really just need to not think too hard about it. The fact that it then continues to try explaining it to you over and over again is worth noting and a justifiable reason for both frustration and criticism, but not entirely relevant. Because Tenet told me not to think too hard, I didn't. I decided to not even bother with the specifics and just accept whatever was going on. And I feel like doing that let me understand the movie at a high level, what was happening and what was set up to make it happen. Anything deeper than what, though, and I felt like I was being physically repelled by the nonsense, which meant that what little effort Nolan put into making me care about the why was a complete failure. I felt nothing. Tenet is just a series of events driven by the fact that they have happened or will happen, but without the sense that anyone has any real agency. And the movie actually argues that they, in fact, do not have any because all the things that will have already happened, having happened means that they will happen. Duh. You get all that? Me neither. And it doesn't matter. I mean, they didn't even bother to give the protagonist a fucking name. And after Tenet finished, I wondered if I'd ever seen any actively but not intentionally nonsensical movies whose plots and characters had worked for me on some deep dramatic level despite that. And at the time, nothing came to mind. And then I saw Wonder Woman 1984 because the truth is that I felt something, and even several somethings during that movie. Even while my brain was screaming, what the actual fuck? My heart was like, aw. Because as stupid as it was that they brought back Chris Pine for this film, and as disturbing as the in-world justification for it is, Diana's yearning for him at the exact moment that she was doing it worked for me. There's no reason for me to believe that she would give up the hero thing just to be with Steve Trevor. Even if you aren't factoring in the whole meta, obviously she's not going to do this because there have to be more of these. But in the moment I did anyway. And much more importantly, the ending. As Maxwell Lord is magically granting every wish being made on Earth because they're touching radio waves or whatever the fuck, Diana ultimately cannot fight him with fists, so she must fight him with words. And she uses the power of truth and hope to get the world to renounce their selfishness and go back to the lives that they had and work hard to make those dreams a reality instead of taking the easy way out. And I know that that is some conservative bullshit. Look, the movie opens with a really dumb sports competition sequence where Diana cheats during a race and is disqualified and gets all whiny about it. And I guess ever since she's been living by the code that no one gets ahead without working for it. And you only get what you deserve through hard work. And actually being a gorgeous warrior princess is a millstone around Diana's neck and not the reason that she's successful. God, this still is the Snyderverse, isn't it? Ugh. To make us feel better about this, they only show us the selfish wishes that random people are making. I want to be beautiful, or a king, or have nuclear weapons. There are no starving families wishing for food, or dying folks wishing for their incurable disease to go away, or for climate change to stop destroying impoverished communities. We aren't seeing the tens of thousands of TikTok kids wishing that Mitch McConnell would get hit in the face with a twisted T. And if we were shown that, the moment where everyone has to renounce their wish to stave off this manufactured global annihilation, wouldn't be so magical or meaningful. And yet, despite all of that, I still thought this sequence worked in the moment because it's giving this character who believes in humanity the chance to win by sharing that belief and hope with the world. It doesn't matter that what she's saying is clearly incorrect. The fact that she wins by saying it instead of punching a dude to death is great, because Diana gets to be a symbol of hope who uses her words and actions to inspire people. Especially because the punching in this movie just doesn't feel good. Which brings us to the other reason I kept thinking about Tenet. Wonder Woman 1984 looks really bad. And I knew literally from the second shot that it was going to be rough. As the camera flies around Themyscira, it eventually shows us that dumb festival I mentioned, where a bunch of people are doing a bunch of acrobatics. And the first one we're shown is doing a weird thing with a whip that looks ridiculous in general, but also, Jesus Christ, her body's physics are so obviously wrong, and it's maddening. And what's mind-boggling is that actually a lot of this stuff was done at least partially for real. Like, the world is completely fake, but they put folks on wires and got them to do things. But unfortunately, they didn't use the wires properly. And so these incredibly powerful beings just feel kind of floaty instead. Anyone who's seen the zero-G stuff in Inception understands how much better Nolan is with wires and rigs. He is so obsessively committed to making sure things just feel right. The Prestige, Inception, Interstellar, and now Tenet all do weird, interesting things with physics, and there is CGI all over these movies. But with few exceptions, it is used to augment reality rather than create it. And when you're caught up in the set pieces of Tenet, you can really feel that reality. Like, when that airplane crashes into the hangar, I don't care how good your simulations are, there is no way to get that scene looking like that, except to do it for real. It is awesome in a literal, awe-inspiring sense. And because you know it's real, it makes what's happening in the film feel plausible in a way the script absolutely never justifies. This is the real reason that the nonsense didn't bother me the way it probably should have in Tenet and definitely did in Wonder Woman 1984. Because regardless of my disbelief in the narrative, there was nothing to suspend about the actual images on screen. And outside of perhaps the car chase/fight between Wonder Woman and Lord's new security detail, what we're seeing in Wonder Woman never really looks right. And so when the narrative does things that don't make sense, the imagery isn't there to keep me connected either. This all makes Wonder Woman 1984 a genuinely frustrating film and a step back from its predecessor in most ways. And I don't know whose fault it is, and I'm sure you couldn't put it all on a single person or even executive boardroom. But you know whose fault it definitely isn't? Chris Pine's. 6.8 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you particularly to my patrons, my mom, Hammer and Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, Magnolia Denton, Elliot Fowler, Greg Lucina, Werner van Alphen, Liam Knipe, Kojo, Phil Bates, Willow, I Am the Sword. If you like this video, that's great. If not, I don't care. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe. Hope to see you in the next one.